Hey everybody, I'm Mike Lowe and we are back, NBA 2K23, and in this particular video, I'm going to walk you through my recommended setup if you're looking for a really realistic sort of general manager experience. So not necessarily a head coach experience or a player experience, or even kind of just the all kind of open sandbox experience. This is just the setup that I like to try and use to simulate that role where you're working with what the game can offer us, such as like relationship balance with your head coach and down to ticket prices, of course, roster management and all of that. And so just going to kind of walk you through my setup. And then we're also going to use this as our introduction to the new streaming series that I'm going to set up, where we're going to be going through and being the general manager of the New York Knicks. So I'm going to just kind of walk through all of that, explain kind of that thought process and where I'm going with it. So the first thing I can say is, of course, you want to jump into MyNBA, and you can go in and do all this manually, but I do have a shared setup that you can use, and I'm going to use that myself. And so just different places you can find this because I've recently updated it. It may show up on the new, there it is. So you'll just have to search. You can, of course, search by my username, which is MikeLow47. That's also my Twitter. So thanks for all of those who are recently following. And we're going to actually, skip to team select. And of course, you can say no and go through and tinker with some other things. But for what I'm trying to do in this video, I can just kind of show you the few of the adjustments that I have set, and really, more importantly, why I'm using those. So I have all of the teams selected. But the idea here when I hit R3 is that they're set up to really run on their own. And what I've gone through, and I've done some early testing just to kind of see, I wanted to turn off things that like the CPU teams wouldn't use, right? And so as much as I would like to use things like facilities, for instance, the AI teams, that when they're set to either just CPU controlled, or even if you're just doing a single player, they're not using that. And so I felt like it gave me an unfair advantage. I didn't really like it. It's kind of like how in Madden, they don't really let the CPU teams use those scenario boosts to get like progression boosts and things like that. And it just kind of makes your team almost like on like steroids, so to speak, right? Your team will start to develop and you a little bit quicker. And I just didn't really like that unfair advantage. So I've also tried to leave on as much as I can in the on position, because I want to utilize what this just terrific MyNBA mode offers to us. But again, just turning off the things that don't work. So in my opinion, here's what I'm turning off, right? I've turned off facilities. I have turned off score because I don't really think it's going to apply here, and I truthfully, personally don't really care. I've turned off skills because, again, the CPU teams won't use this. Now, you could always leave it on, and you could go through each team every few weeks and go through this. It's just kind of tedious for me, and I just don't really like it. I don't think I should have to unlock things as a general manager where suddenly my players are +1 in rebounding. It's a little too gamey for me, so I've turned it off. As much as I like the concept of tasks, I've also turned those off because you would have to go through each of the teams on your own and not just activate those tasks, but really make the decision and like the commitment level, like you're going to guarantee to do it, or you're going to say it's unlikely or whatever. And those keep popping up through the season. And again, it's just, it wasn't worth it to me. It's kind of tedious to go through all 30 teams and look at those to see what's popping up and then do my best to guess. The other reason I have it turned off is I don't even know if it matters for those teams, because if they're not making those goals, I don't really know if it's going to impact. And really, I think the goals are just kind of like lame. Like they're kind of obvious, like, hey, increase attendance. Let's try to win more games this year. I mean, yeah, of course, right? That's already, if they were a little bit more kind of like how Out of the Park baseball has it, where it's like, I want you to extend this player, or I want you to trade this player. And I do believe those will pop up later. Like get this player off the roster, that kind of thing. But I don't know. It just wasn't worth the hassle to me. So those are the 4 things that I have turned off: tasks, skills, score, and facilities. Everything else is on. The other thing that I do is I have all of the user teams, and again, quote unquote user teams, they're really CPU teams, just kind of that I allow myself to go in and make adjustments if I need to. Everything else is set to on, right? And that's pretty straightforward. And then the only other really change that I've done, let's just say you're not going to be the 76ers. So I could take any of these other teams that you won't be. The only other thing I went in here, because there are some different menus when you get down to the team level settings, right? So as I click over to 76ers, and let's just say they're going to be a CPU team for you like they are me, I can go through here. Nothing on this screen will change. But on the team feature settings, there are some more options that suddenly become available. And most importantly, the only other adjustment that I'm making here is I'm turning off the lock menu. I like the relationships being on. I think it's kind of cool how you have to kind of manage those relationships, whether they're players or your staff. But I find it kind of silly to be hired as a general manager where you have absolutely no say in quite a bit, right? I mean, there's just too much kind of just turned off. Now you can manually handle that yourself. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to get in the way of the coach. He's going to set the lineup. That's what I do, for instance. But I found it silly that like I have no input on like player mentorship. I have no input on practice. And again, not that a general manager would. That would be pretty hands-on. But the fact that I'm like completely locked out of a lot of stuff just seemed kind of silly to me. Unfortunately, you have to go through all 29 teams. I've done this for you in the setup. You would have to go through and like team by team turn this off. So like 76ers and then scroll back down and then go over to the Bucks, scroll back down. I have it all set up that way. So we are good to go. The only other thing that I need to do here is, go to the Knicks, because that's the team I'm going to use, and I'll talk about why I picked them in a little bit. And I just need to kind of get them set up now for me, right? So as the GM, I'm going to turn everything off, but I am going to leave the lineup automation on because I'm not the coach. Now, that's just my preference. I'm not saying that's the right way. That's just what I prefer. Let me start from the bottom here. And I'm just going to go through and just turn all these off. Because as my kind of the role that I want to take here is just being the GM. And I may even go as far as like running a MyNBA where I don't even play the games. Like I might just kind of watch them and maybe watch one game a week and just kind of go through the off seasons. That's the stuff I kind of like. I'm not, great on the sticks with this game or anything. So it's probably better for the team if I'm more hands off. So I have everything off except for I'm letting the coach do his job. Maybe I'll go in and tinker and that kind of thing. But this is all set to go. And then I'm just going to hit advance. And of course, it jumps us in to the modern era MyNBA, because I'm assuming that's where a lot of people are going to want to be starting these sort of things. The eras thing, really, really cool. I have a ton of other videos on my channel covering each of the different eras, including a 40-year simulation going from 83 up to 2022. So be sure to check those out. Then, of course, in here, I just go in and load a real life draft class. You don't have to. I actually like the fictional ones because there's no like preconceived bias or anything like that when I go to drafting. But I just kind of loaded up the 2023, the latest one. And that's here we are. I mean, next thing I can say is just be sure to save. I like to keep a couple backups because sometimes you go through and he'll just kind of create a maybe you mess something up or you're just testing something like I like to do a lot. But here we are. Next thing I can say is, make sure you click over to the team that you want to be on. So I'm going to click over to the Knicks. So let's talk about this streaming series a little bit here and why I picked the Knicks. So I like to take on kind of the general manager role. I just think that's fun. I like the team building side. I am certainly not an X's and O's guy when it comes to basketball. So for me to kind of take on a head coaching role at the NBA level would be completely ridiculous. So, and at the same time, I don't think you need to be like an absolute perfectionist as far as X's and O's to be a good general manager in a sports league, right? There's a lot of other facets that come into that. So that's the role that I enjoy. And reason I picked the Knicks was, especially at opening day here, I said, well, there wasn't like GM turnover last year, but there were some teams that were pretty borderline. Like I was looking at the Lakers. Of course, they super underachieved, I think, by most people's standards last year. The Knicks have just been kind of just in this weird NBA purgatory for a number of years, kind of like how my Pistons were for a long time. And I was also looking at the Thunder just because they had a pretty rough year. Their GM has been there since like 2007 in real life, and I just thought, maybe they're looking for a change. And kind of how I did this was, let me kind of show you. I actually went down like to the governor level, and I kind of looked at like different governors of saying, okay, on opening day, what kind of a governor here might say, you know what, I know it's opening day, I've had enough, I'm firing the GM here. And I looked at, here we have the Knicks with a level 1 patience, importance of team success and team image are 5 stars, level of involvement 5. Like this is like the perfect recipe. He's also a gambler. You can see he has the icon of the dice there. So this is a guy who's just like, you know what, I'm all in, screw it, let's go, fire the GM, let's hire Mike Lowe, doesn't know a ton about basketball. Sounds like a great move. And so this Philip Turner character, it just kind of fit the role. And again, similarly, I was looking at that, looking at that with the Lakers. Again, level of patience, the importance of team success is almost the same thing, right? But the level of involvement was a little bit lower. I forget why. I looked at this yesterday and I was kind of forget why I didn't pick the Lakers. Oh, I think the reason was when I looked at the roster, they actually have like the highest rated roster in the league. And again, not a huge surprise, but I thought like, well, I don't know, that's not as fun. Not that I need a complete teardown. Like I actually, if you follow me before on social media and stuff, you know that I don't really find the rebuild. I think that's super overplayed. I think it's played out, and I don't think it's as hard as everyone thinks. When you're in a rebuild, there's only one direction to go. Your team stinks. You can only build up. You have easier draft picks. I think the hardest challenge is picking a middle of the road team, a team that was around 500, or a team that just kind of they don't really know what direction they're going, and that's part of your first early decisions is deciding on that. And so I was looking at the Thunder, again, gambler level of patience, it was there, but they have so many draft picks, and I think a lot of people are going to want to pick them. Like they have they had a ton of like first round draft picks in these next few years. So that's probably a really, really fun team to pick if you're into that sort of thing. And of course I am too, but I felt like it was just a little bit too easy. Like it was just going to be too much of the quote unquote rebuild, which I just think is really, really played out and kind of boring. So again, not that the Knicks are even a middle of the pack team at all. I mean, they're just kind of this in the weird purgatory thing. And I liked it that it's like, okay, yeah, like if you're really going to hire some schmo like me who doesn't know what the hell he's doing with the NBA, necessarily. I mean, this is kind of cool. Like my neck's on the line, and I think it makes for a really, really fun streaming series, which is what I'm going to be doing here as we go through and really just kind of talk about the role of a general manager and kind of running a team. And I want it to be heavily involved with you as well. So like the decisions what I want to do on each of these streams is bring a decision to the table at the end that you can kind of mull over before the next stream, and then I'll kind of take that feedback into account as we go through and try to get this team relevant again. I mean, even in the broadcasts and stuff, they're talking about how the Brooklyn Nets are kind of the new team in New York. And I mean, that's just hard to believe, right? As someone who's grew up watching, older, I won't say old school NBA, maybe older school NBA, where, the Patrick Ewing Knicks and so on were just a staple in the NBA. So pretty wild there. So that's what I do. Again, I would love to have things like tasks turned on, and I think in an online league, I probably would, and things like that. But I just don't like giving myself an advantage that the CPU controlled teams don't have. And as far as I can tell, even if you just set it up as a single team, MyNBA, I don't believe those things are activated for the CPU teams. When I went through and just kind of simmed it, I would go back and check at the end of the year to see if any teams were doing anything, and they just weren't. I mean, not even like clicking to actually assign themselves a tasks. Like it's just inactive. It's really just kind of set up there for the user, which is still cool. And by all means, go use them, right? I mean, no one's going to judge you for doing that. The features are there, and I think they're cool because they're kind of like those mini games, right? They're kind of games within games, which are really cool. And again, the kind of just modern, game design and gamification and that kind of thing. Just kind of doing a lot with that. I think it's really, really well done. I just personally don't want to use it. So that's where we're at. Again, as we kind of look at this streaming series, I can leave you with just kind of a general thought of what I'm looking at. And really, my thought to leave you with is this roster. I don't actually think this roster is that bad. Like, I like a lot of what we have here with the Knicks. What I've noticed is, if I go and look at kind of what my coach is doing with his game plan, I really like 4 out of our 5 starters. I like Brunson, I like Barrett, I like Randall, I like Robinson. D Rose, of course, huge respect, but I mean the 34-year-old version of Derrick Rose, maybe I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think I'm necessarily ready to like make a move right now, the first week in October or anything like that. But certainly it's on my mind because I just don't think this team needs defense. First of all, they are really, really, really weak on the defensive side of the ball. And unfortunately, a 34-year-old Derrick Rose isn't doing a ton to help with that. And so he's a guy that maybe we look to kind of move. But I like these other 4 pieces. And I think the other challenge with this roster is our bench. Again, it's not that it's terrible, but there's just nothing here. As much as I like these 4, and I'm like, yeah, I see a place. I don't think we need to get too crazy here. Let these 4 develop. The bench is just kind of like, I don't know. It's not super deep. And again, I think my biggest reason is we just have a lot of guys who are kind of the same. They're kind of offensive players as opposed to just being really bringing much defense to the table. And that's not everybody, but just collectively, there's just not a lot there. And I am somebody, especially with Thibodeau as the coach, he's a defensive coach, right? I don't feel that this team has he doesn't have the team that he really needs. And so as his general manager here, what I'm hoping to do is kind of maybe put more players who are more of that defensive mentality onto this roster so he can best utilize them. And of course, we're still going to want to score points and whatnot. But I see enough variety here where we can do that. And I think guys coming off the bench, especially to kind of give these guys a spell, it's going to be important to get some defensive players in there. And so that's something I'm looking at. As we go further down the roster, there's actually some guys I like as developmental projects, even some of the D-League guys. I like Cam Reddish. There's just some guys here that they're not really scheduled to get much playing time at this point with injuries and whatnot. They will. Kalen Martin, I think is how you say his name. He was signed actually as soon as I started the franchise at I think it just wanted to fill out the roster. So it just assigned this guy to my team. But again, there's some stuff here that I definitely think we can work with, and we'll get more into that, especially with as I get this series going. But this was more just kind of talking about my setup and how and why I'm going about it. But really, the gist is I'm setting up a general manager kind of themed MyNBA. I want to be hands off with the coach, let him do his job, and really just kind of talk about those relationships with your governor/owner. Relationships with the players, relationships with the coach, even relationships with the league, right? With sponsorships and things like that. And really just kind of go through all of these different challenges. And like I said, I'm even considering letting it kind of play out as more kind of sim heavy, and even just maybe watching a lot of the games, which I think would be kind of cool. And I won't necessarily stream those games, but we can just kind of talk about it. Every 2 weeks or so, kind of check in. Here's how the team did. Here's what I saw. Maybe here's some highlights or something like that. So anyway, if that sounds interesting to you, I would love for you to participate, share your feedback, let me know what you think, one, about just kind of the general setup I'm using or questions that you have for your own setup, but also for the Knicks. What are you seeing with this roster? As my unofficial assistant general managers, reach out to me. Let me know what you're seeing. Let me know any ideas you have, and avoid spoilers. You don't need to tell me, oh, make sure you draft this guy. He's got a hidden A potential. But just generally speaking, how do we start this, right? What are we going to do? And my first thought is we let it kind of play out a little bit. Let's let the season breathe and see what the Knicks kind of show us. And then we can really start talking about some of the decisions and ideas that you maybe have. So I'm Mike Lowe. I appreciate checking out this video and all of the videos this past week and so forth. I'm on Twitter at MikeLowe47. And again, thanks for subscribing to the YouTube channel, and we will definitely be talking more soon. See you then.